So let's get started. Today's webinar is on how Microsoft Azure can save can save your cost of your backup and disaster recovery infrastructure. My name is Roshan. I work as a technical consultant on infrastructure as a service. I'm based out of Ingram Micro Dubai head office, and I take care of partners working in South Africa, Saudi Arabia, Morocco, Egypt, uh, Dubai, of course, and other parts of Gulf. Today's session will be pre-sales and technical session, not a lot of sales-oriented data. This is what the agenda looks like. So we'll quickly start off with what is the current market trend in terms of cloud, in terms of what are the predictions for 2019 for Saudi Arabia, for Gulf, where is the entire Middle East progressing towards. Then we'll start going into today's concept of what are the cloud backup benefits, what are the cloud backup solutions for Microsoft Azure, what are the disaster recovery and cloud benefits, and what solutions of disaster recovery are available on the cloud. To begin with, as you can see, the current trend, we see that the entire Middle East market is growing right from 2015-16 onwards. Everybody is talking about cloud. Everybody wants to see how cloud can benefit them. And the same is also showcased on this slide. As you can see, the trend for both software as a service and infrastructure as a service is growing year over year. In the year 2019-2020, we are seeing almost close to $1 billion worth of revenue being generated from just infrastructure as a service. Of course, software as a service will always be one of the hot selling products of cloud. But infrastructure as a service is the area where a partner can make more margin, more profit, more revenue when compared to software as a service. Because in infrastructure as a service, there is consulting, there is professional services, there is managed services and support, apart from just selling the solution. So there's a lot of market available for not just IT software, but IT services as well. As you can see, both the solutions are running at a very high pace, at a very high volume. I just wanted to reconfirm. I saw a couple of people pinging me that my voice is not clear, is not audible. I would appreciate if you could just participate in the poll and let me know if you're able to hear me clearly. Okay, wonderful. So I see that people are able to hear me clearly. So I just got a message from a couple of people saying that they are unable to hear. So wonderful. So let's continue. This is the market trend. So I would definitely encourage all my partners to capture as much market as possible and make the most of it. You might also have heard news of vendors opening up data centers within the Middle East. Oracle has already launched their data center this week in Abu Dhabi. Microsoft is set to open a data center in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Uh, uh, AWS is opening up a data center in Bahrain. Oracle also plans to open up a data center in Saudi Arabia. So you see there's a lot of focus even from the vendors. Vendors know that this is a big market to capture, and there as and when the vendors start pushing more and more cloud products, the revenue eventually will start going into cloud with respect to infrastructure as a service and software as a service. So in infrastructure as a service and talking about infrastructure as a service, one of the easy selling items when it comes to infrastructure as a service is backup. I'm sure most of you and your customers are using one or the other cloud product, right? I'm sorry, one or the other backup product. And it is very easy to go to a customer and plug in cloud to their existing backup solution. Some of the benefits of positioning cloud backup is cloud is expandable, right? So today, if your customer wants to back up 100 GB of data, he can just pay for 100 GB of cloud storage. If he wants to back up 1 TB, he can pay for 1 TB. If he wants to back up 1.2 TB tomorrow, he can only pay for 1.2 TB. So he doesn't need to plan for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years, and buy the big SAN storage today itself. So in this way, it saves a lot of cost to the customer. The other benefit of cloud is reliability. Both Microsoft, AWS, IBM Cloud, every cloud vendor gives you the highest reliability of the storage, which means the data can never be deleted accidentally by the vendor. It is always and always available. They also give you an uptime of 99.9%, which means your data is always available to you. When you back up, when you do a restore, the data is always available to you. You can always connect to the storage and perform a backup or perform a backup and restoration. It has very good integration with most of the popular cloud backup solutions. In the very next slide, you will see that there are several solutions, uh, backup solutions with which Microsoft Azure has a straight integration. There is no additional license required. There is no big configuration required. You don't need to uh, configure it for a couple of days. It's a matter of minutes that you can configure cloud backup and start using it with your existing software, backup software which you have. So because of all these, as a partner, you can definitely go ahead and pitch cloud solution to your customer, a cloud backup solution. If your customer is already storing a backup locally, no problem. It is very normal for a customer to always have a backup locally, but you have to make him realize that it is also important to have a secondary copy of your backup, because primary, just having one backup copy, that backup location might get corrupted, it might be destroyed, the backup may not work as efficiently as he expected it to. So it's always important to make your customer realize that, hey, have another copy of your backup of your data, and this time store it in a reliable, scalable, well-known vendor platform, so that even if your local backup does not perform or does not give you the right uh, does not help you restore your data, the cloud backup will always help you do that. So let's look at some of the options which actually have backup integration with Azure. To start off with, the very first product I want to talk is BackupExec. Veritas BackupExec is one of the most popular backup solutions available in the market. A lot of customers and partners buy and sell this. Veritas BackupExec 16 and above, right? The version 16 and above has a direct Azure cloud connector, which means the customer does not need to buy the connector. The connector is actually free of cost. This is a feature available in the product. The customer can directly click on this particular button, configure backup to be taken directly onto Microsoft Azure. So using the same console, using the same interface, he now has the option to backup directly onto cloud. So you as a reseller, if you're already selling BackupExec to your customers, now you have an upsell opportunity with your customers. If you are a partner who doesn't sell BackupExec, you can always go check with your customer, hey, which backup solution do you use? And if one of your customer or some of your customers are using BackupExec, then now you have an upsell or a cross-sell opportunity for them. I have a question from one of the participants here. The question is, can we use Azure Cloud Backup Solution to migrate VMs? And I'm sorry, I'm not sure what HM means. I think it is physical servers from existing provider to Microsoft VM. The answer is yes, you can use the backup solution. So if you're backing up on premise, if you're backing up virtual machines, if you're doing an image backup, if you're doing application backup, you can all backup and store this backup onto Azure, right? Now, migration is a different story, right? So backup is a different story. So migration, I'll probably talk in the upcoming slide. When I talk about disaster recovery, I'll talk more about the migration and disaster recovery there. But can you use Microsoft Azure uh, with your existing backup solutions to migrate at a very high level? The answer is yes, you can do it. I don't want to go into details right now because I'll be covering in the upcoming slides. The next solution is again from Veritas. This solution is called Veritas NetBackup. Now, Veritas has two backup solutions. One is BackupExec, that is primarily focused at small to enterprise customers. NetBackup is only for enterprise customers. This product also has a direct integration with Azure. So again, similar to BackupExec, you can just on a click of a button configure the connector and directly store the data onto Azure. So for your enterprise customers, especially customers who have terabytes of data, managing storage, on-prem SAN is a very big problem for them. So you can always go ahead and pitch in the solution where if they're already using NetBackup, they one click, create an Azure connector, connect to Azure and start putting data onto cloud. And do remember, all the data which is stored in Azure is encrypted. When the data is getting moved from on-premise to Azure, that communication channel is also encrypted. So your data is always encrypted and stored securely. The next solution is from Veeam. Now, Veeam is again one of the market leaders when it comes to backup solution. The latest release of Veeam, which is Veeam 9.5 Update 4. Please remember, it is Veeam 9.5 Update 4. Update 4 was released 2 to 3 weeks ago. If your customers are on Update 3, make sure they upgrade to Update 4, because in Update 4, Veeam has introduced a direct connectivity to Microsoft Blob Storage, similar to BackupExec and NetBackup. So your Veeam customers now can directly back up their data onto Azure. So again, you can do this exercise. Just go through your customer profile and check who uses which backup solution. If they use Veritas, is it BackupExec or NetBackup? If it is Veeam, which version? If they're at a lower version, then there is an opportunity for you to sell upgrade license or sell them upgrade professional services, and also help them configure the backup to cloud, right? So you have very good opportunity with your existing Veeam customers now to go ahead and position Microsoft Azure as a backup repository. The next solution is from a product called as Commvault. Commvault is again one of the backup and replication products which is available in the market, used by many customers. Commvault again has a direct integration with Microsoft Azure. So this is actually one of the product case studies which is also available on Microsoft website as well. So Commvault has a very tight integration with Microsoft Azure Blob Storage, and you can configure, you can schedule the backup, you can do, when you're restoring, you can do application consistent restorations. All those features and functionalities is available with Commvault. And all the backup solutions so far I've spoken about support all types of backups, which is VM backup, image backup, full backup, differential backup, application consistent backup, files and folders backup. All these are supported by all the vendors whom I've spoken so far. Next solution is Acronis. Acronis is again one of the very good solutions available in the market today. Acronis has two variants of backup solution. One is the 12.5, which is their on-prem solution, and one is Acronis Cloud Backup, which is their cloud product. The current one, which I'm talking about, is the Acronis on-premise, the 12.5 version. So if your customers are using Acronis on-premise software to take backup and store it on, let's say, on SAN or NAS or tape drive, you can go ahead and configure Acronis Cloud Backup software to go ahead and take the backup onto Microsoft Azure as well. It has a functionality where the destination of the backup can be Microsoft Azure. Again, out of the box integration, no customization required, no additional license from the Acronis side is required. It is straight out of the box. Last solution which I have is from Microfocus. Microfocus Data Protector is a product from HP Software or Microfocus, which can go ahead and perform a backup and store the backup on Microsoft Azure. It has, again, a direct connectivity to Microsoft Azure, and it will go ahead and let you perform a backup and restoration of all the solutions and technologies from on-premise to Azure. So these are some of the products for which we have a direct integration without any additional license required from the vendor side. When I say vendor, from Veem or Veritas or Acronis, you don't need to buy any additional license. You can directly go ahead, back up the solutions, use this product, backup, and directly store it onto cloud. I quickly wanted to give you a summary in terms of what might be an average costing for a solution like this. Now, do remember on the left-hand side, it is existing customer backup solution. My assumption is that the customer is already using one of these solutions, right? So he already has one of these solutions. Now, do remember, in case the customer doesn't have any of the solution, you can always go ahead and propose Azure Backup Service or Azure Backup Server. So this is an agent available within Azure, which can perform backup and restore operation. Each agent cost of Azure Backup is $10 per month. So that is just for your information. But coming back to our topic, if your customer has any of these solutions, and let's say for assumption, if he requires 2 terabyte of data, right, all he will need to pay is $50 or less than $50 a month, right? $50 for 2 terabyte of data is a very, very cheap price. A customer can easily budget this and have it as part of his IT infrastructure, right? It is very simple, easy to configure. To make your life easier, what Ingram has also done is, let me go ahead and share my screen so that I can show you this as well. We have created a backup and disaster recovery guide, which will give you not only the way what are the solutions, but it also helps you configure the various solutions. So we have created 2 guides. One guide is talking about why backup and disaster recovery is important, and the second guide is how you can integrate Microsoft Azure with your backup solution. So here, as you can see, we have solution architecture, we have implementation steps. So this guide will be made available to all the participants today, and you'll find detailed step-by-step document of how the solution can be integrated with Microsoft Azure storage. So for example, starting off with Acronis, implementation steps with screenshots and how it will be accessible, what changes you have to do. With Commvault, solution architecture and implementation steps. We are also providing video reference in case you want to follow a video We're also putting a video reference. So this document will also be shared with you so that you can use it for your reference when you start implementing with your customers. So now we spoke about backup, right? Next is disaster recovery. Now, why is disaster recovery important? Everybody knows that having a downtime is very, very expensive, right? There are customers who have had downtime and were not able to recover and had to shut down their businesses. There are customers who are into financial uh, services where uptime is the most important thing for their business. Also, backup alone is not enough. If you are an enterprise customer who has multiple locations and have more than 300-400 customers working with you, just having a backup of your data will not be enough. You have to make sure that if one system doesn't work, there is another system ready to start catering to the request. Also remember, disaster can happen at any time. People usually think that a disaster is only because of earthquake or floods or things like this. No, a disaster can even happen internally. Let's say your company administrator is leaving the job and joining a competitor. He can actually delete data intentionally, or crash the servers intentionally as well. uh, there are times that unintentionally people go ahead and crash servers because of a wrong script, or a wrong way of executing a program. There might be several disaster that is not related to nature, so it is very important to make sure that you always have another copy of your data available to cater to your customers. And if you have a disaster, then your reputation is also on the line, right? If once you have a disaster at your site and customers are not able to access your data, then it is very unlikely that the customer will again come back to you to do business or to transact with you for any kind of sensitive or insensitive data. So it is very important to make sure that you always have disaster recovery in place for your applications, because today data is everything. Data is more important than money. So it is very important to make sure that you always have security for your data. So what are some of the benefits of having a disaster recovery on cloud? I'm sorry, the fifth slide is not showing. I'll just enable it so you can probably see it clearly. So in simple terms, disaster recovery on cloud has several benefits. I just wanted to point out some of the most important benefits. One of the most important benefits, especially with respect to Microsoft Azure, is it works with both physical and virtual infrastructure. So if you want to do a disaster recovery for any of your application, whether it is running on virtual, whether it is running on physical, whether it is running on VMware or Hyper-V, it will perform a disaster recovery for these servers onto cloud. It's very easy to set up, right? One of the true benefits of Azure disaster recovery is the simplicity in which you can set up. Usually people have this misconception saying, hey, for disaster recovery, I need very skilled technical people. I need very good investment in terms of infrastructure and network and cabling and software. The answer is no, you don't need it. It is very, very simple and very easy to set up. The third point is it is scalable, which means today if you do a disaster recovery for one of or two of your application, and tomorrow if you want to slowly increase that disaster recovery setup for all your applications, it is very, very simple and easy to do. You don't need to reconfigure everything from the scratch to make sure all your applications are part of your disaster recovery setup. And the last but the best part is you only pay when you use. In Microsoft Azure, when there is no disaster, you do not pay for the runtime of the virtual machines. You only pay for storage and let's say if you have set up a site-to-site VPN. And in the previous slide, you just saw storage is very, very cheap in Azure, right? So for example, if you have 2 or 3 servers for which you're doing a disaster recovery onto Azure, your monthly cost will be just $100 to $150 a month. Only the month when you perform a failover from on-premise to cloud, that month you might pay another $50 extra, right? So overall, for a small customer or 2-3 server customer, if he has a budget of spending $2,000 to $2,500 a year, you can give him a fully fledged uh, enterprise grade disaster recovery solution, which is very good for a lot of customers. For enterprise customers, the cost might increase more and more because of the number of servers are also more. But if you compare it with any on-premise disaster recovery setup, it is very, very cost effective. So what is the service which we would use in Azure to set up this disaster recovery? The service which we use is called as Azure Site Recovery. This service helps you set up disaster recovery for all your applications. It is not only Microsoft application. You can do disaster recovery for Citrix. You can do disaster recovery for SAP. You can do disaster recovery for various other applications which are third party. Linux based machines are also supported for disaster recovery. It provides you almost near to zero downtime. It has no impact when you do DR drills or DR test. This is again a very big advantage which you can explain to your customers. Setting up disaster recovery is expensive if you do it on-prem. Testing of disaster recovery is more expensive if you set it on-prem, because then you need to have a team, you need to have all the connectivity ready, all the replication ready, you need to make sure the replication pipe is up and running all the time. There is no failures, public IP addresses, all these things are required. And when you perform a test, you need to make sure that no impact happens on your production. When you do a disaster recovery with cloud, with just one click, you can set up a test DR onto Azure, and it will create a separate network altogether where you can do a DR, test your applications, and once the testing is done, again with just one click, you can delete the entire test DR setup. So it is as simple as one click to perform a DR drill and another click to delete the resources created during DR drill. So it is as simple and as easy to do. One of the other very good features about site recovery is actually free to use for the first 31 days. The billing of site recovery starts after the first month. So if you have a small customer whose data can be replicated to Azure within the first 31 days, he technically doesn't need to pay for the site recovery at all. You can actually go ahead and migrate all his servers onto Azure using site recovery within 31 days at free of cost, right? So this is, you can say, a hidden recipe available within Azure and very useful for small to medium sized customers. So quickly, I wanted to touch base about Azure Site Recovery with respect to VMware, since we have a lot of customers who use VMware. So for VMware, we definitely need to make sure that we have an additional component between our VMware and Microsoft Azure. That additional component is called as the configuration server. You see the box here. This box basically represents an additional component. This configuration server is a component which is freely downloadable by Microsoft. This component actually helps the conversion of the VMware files to Azure files. So Azure is able to communicate and understand what you have. And it also helps in both failover and failback. Okay. This configuration server can also be used for doing a for doing an AWS migration to Azure as well, and for physical server. So when it comes to VMware physical or AWS, you will require an additional virtual machine, you can say, right? Or additional server when it comes to physical server, in order for you to have a disaster recovery setup for these type of environment. For Hyper-V, that is not required. Hyper-V, you can just go ahead and set up straight with Azure without the need of configuration server. Since Microsoft understands Hyper-V, Azure understands Hyper-V very well, you don't need an additional configurator in the middle to go ahead and perform that configuration for you. This brings me to the end of today's session. Now the floor is open for question and answers. Let me quickly check what are the questions we have. Okay, so the question is, can we use Azure backup solutions to migrate virtual machines and physical servers from existing provider to Azure VM? The answer is yes. What I would want to know is which backup solution are you using? For example, if you're using Commvault, you can do that. If you're using Double Take, you can do that. If you're using Veem, you can do that. If you're using Acronis, I'm not 100% sure. I will need to check if Acronis can help you do that. If you're using Micro Focus, you can do that. So most of the backup solutions also help you migrate your virtual machines. BackupExec 16 can integrate with connector. The answer is no. The BackupExec 15 does not have the connector. It has to be BackupExec 16 and above. So from 16, the current version is 20. So above 16, any version, it will give you the direct connector. Can we use Acronis backup of physical server and recover to an Azure VM for business continuity purpose? Okay. Can we use Acronis backup of physical server and recover to Azure VM for business continuity purpose? The answer for this is no, you cannot do a backup of Acronis of physical server and then recover that to a VM in Azure. I can give you another solution if you're interested. Veeam has a software called Veeam Backup Edition. Okay, there are actually two variants: Veeam Backup Free Edition and Veeam Backup Paid Edition. This can help you take a backup of your physical server, and Veeam also has a feature called Direct Restore to Azure. So you can take the backup, read the backup, and create the virtual machine out of it. So that is one solution available in the market, which I'm aware, but I don't know whether Acronis can actually help you do that. There's also a question that says, what is Azure file storage compared to others? Okay. Now, within Azure storage, there are different types of storages. The cheapest one is blob storage, which is the one that integrates with every other platform like Veem and Commvault and Veritas, NetBackup, BackupExec. For Acronis, we have to use a different type of storage called as file storage. Now, file storage is slightly expensive, and that is why you saw the difference in cost, right? So for Acronis, it doesn't have a direct connectivity to blob storage. It has a connectivity to file storage, and hence the cost of file storage is expensive. So that is the difference between these two. Okay. So I would like to know if there are any further questions. So if you have any opportunities, any customer for which you want to discuss with me and get in touch with me, this is my email address. I will also type it on the chat so everybody has my email address. Also, I will be sending you the document the guide which we have created, which gives step-by-step documentation of how you can integrate the existing backup solutions with Microsoft Azure. Right, you can go through it and use it for any other questions. Please do contact our Saudi team. We have a team in Saudi who can go ahead and give you any kind of help with respect to demo, with respect to POC, with respect to migration. You can definitely go ahead and provide you all this assistance. We have another question here. Can we use the Azure Backup Integrated Solution? So we have a question that is asked by a gentleman where he's asking if we can use Azure Backup, the out-of-the-box Azure Backup, to move the VMs from migrate mobile cloud VMs to Azure VMs. I will need to check this. I'm not 100% sure. If you don't mind, if you could drop me an email, I can double check, because I will need to check what level of access does Mobily provides. If I can find that, then I should be able to tell you if we are able to do this. Where do you get the documents? I will be sharing you the documents via email. I have all your email addresses. People who have registered, I hope everybody is registered using your company email address. Unfortunately, the document cannot be shared on private or Hotmail or personal email addresses. So make sure you have registered on company email address so we can drop you an email. Last question, what is the difference between ASR and DR? ASR is Azure Site Recovery, which helps you perform disaster recovery. So in simple English, no difference. ASR is a service which helps you perform disaster recovery from on-premise to cloud. Okay. So great, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time. This brings me to the end of the session today. I hope it was helpful and informative. I'll be sharing the slide, the documents, and the recordings later today. Please go through it. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with me or to our partners in Saudi. We have an office in Daman. We have an office in Jeddah. We have an office in Riyadh. Please do get in touch with us. We can come on site, work with you, with your customers to close the deals. So thank you again very much, and have a great day ahead.